Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Get Buy-in for an Open Data Initiative. Our host today is Jessica Cook. Jessica is joined by Sherry Schoonover, Deputy IT Director for the City of Topeka, Kansas. This webinar is designed to be interactive and we encourage your questions. Just use the Send Question to Staff feature and go to webinar and we'll answer as soon as possible. Again, thank you for joining us today. Let's get started. Jessica?
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you everyone for attending. We have a great turnout today for this webinar on how to get buy-in for your open data initiative, and I want to thank you all for being here. So as my colleague Patrick said, we are taking your questions throughout the show. We do want this to be interactive, so please feel free to send them in and we'll answer them as soon as possible. I also want to thank our presenter, Sherry Schoonover, Deputy IT Director for the City of Topeka, Kansas. So Sherry, to start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and experience?
Good afternoon, and I appreciate everybody joining us. I have been working with the City of Topeka now for approximately 7 years. I originally came from the microbiology private sector, and I've been anything from project manager to CIO to you kind of name it. Originally, I'm from Munich, Germany, and so you're going to hear a little bit of an accent. So forgive me, I have not lost it all the way. I have a background in business and computer science, and I love doing this type of work.
Wonderful. So sorry, did you mention, how long have you been in this current role with Topeka?
For a little bit over 7 years.
Great. So let's get right into the questions. So we're going to start off with, what originally motivated Topeka to pursue financial transparency?
Part of the City of Topeka's strategic plan is to implement a transparency initiative. One of our goals is to develop an infrastructure to make it easier to deploy information. So the challenge was issued by our city manager, Jim Colson, to ensure effectiveness and efficiency in the city's operation, and he likes to give challenges out like this. So we met the challenge by creating a citizen information system or open data portal, and budget was the area that we were focusing on. And this way it allows us easier deployment of our information. Now, with most governments, we deal with funds, enterprise fund or bonds and those type of things. And for our citizens, that is just absolutely, confusing. So we wanted to do something different. And we also wanted to show our citizens, where the money is going, rather than having to go through 200 pages of our budget book, but is very comprehensive but difficult to understand. So when the governments don't make it easier for people to understand something, they often become uninterested and disengaged. And we just wanted to find a way to get our public to re-engage, be interested in what we're doing.
Great. So moving on to the next question then. So tell us how you initially presented the Open Budget Initiative internally.
Once I found a product that was very appealing, and I gone through about 20 different companies and looked for something that was very easy and interactive, then, and our budget information's been out on the websites for years, but they're PDFs, they're buried in a lot of different department pages. So when I found Socrata, I really liked the format. I thought it was easy to understand and maneuver, and then provided us with the capability to display the information in a different format, exactly the way I kind of had envisioned this. So once we got the vendor identified, I did a pilot. I found out a long time ago is rather than putting it in a white paper and and kind of on whiteboards, I do a proof of concept or a pilot. It's a lot easier to explain. So that's what we did. So we created we used the 2015 budget, what was approved already. We recategorized it into something that our public would understand, like public safety and infrastructure, what are really, really hot topics around here. And then I loaded the first data set and then presented to city manager. And he said it was like awesome format. His quote was, "I never seen the budget displayed this way. I really like it." So that was the first green light that we needed to move ahead.
Great, and you mentioned you used the approved 2015 budget for your proof of concept. Was there a reason you chose that particular piece of data to use?
Yes, because the 2015 budget was approved by the council and it was publicly made available. So my goal was that the bottom numbers had to be identical, had to match. Categories of how we displayed it was different. You could do it by departments, or you can do it by, category like public safety. But I wanted to make sure that everybody understood. If you look at the bottom line, it is the same that is in our budget book. Because if you go by fund, your totals are different. So that was one thing we always wanted to drive home is, see, it's the same budget, nothing different. It's just we displayed it different. We give it in a different format. Because I was a little bit concerned that that might have been a little bit learning curve, but absolutely no issue at all.
Excellent, good decision. So moving on to the next question then, how did you determine what data sets to include in open budget, and how did you prepare that data? And I know you touched on that briefly about sorting things into different categories.
Yeah, and so once we identified, we have something we have to comply to, and it's called CAFR. It's one of those federal reporting, and it already has predefined categories in it. So what we were looking at is like the questions that we get from the public. What is it they're interested in? Well, they're interested in infrastructure. How much money are you spending? How much money are you spending for safety? How much money are you spending on a particular program? So that feedback, that's what we took. And then after that was I had to use the current format of the budget, what was a little bit different, and then basically use the spreadsheet and kind of laid it out and manipulate it and to make it fit and then load it. Once we identified exactly what we wanted and everybody liked it, then we set up a SQL query. So now it's a matter of just dumping it out and run it up.
Great. Now you mentioned creating a SQL, so that's an in-house sort of bridge that you built.
Yeah, because we have a financial enterprise system, and the one thing that I don't want to do is have any of my people do all of the manual manipulation. So we basically just, built a query and a script, but took it from one format and put it in the next.
So it's updating automatically right now, and how often is it updating?
Well, since it's only budget, you only update it, once a year, except you're going through a budget cycle, and right now we're through a budget cycle. So currently we're updating our 2016 proposed budget on a weekly basis. What we currently have loaded is 14, 15, and 16, two approved, one proposed, what allows us to show trends. That's the other thing what was very important, because it's always like, well, in the past you always spend more money. Well, no, here you do exactly see of what the funding was over the last 3 years, and as you can see, it's been static or is a decline. So every change can be explained, and it's visually, and it's easy to understand. So that's the other thing what I really like about this.
Great. So let's move on to how you presented this open budget to the City Council in particular.
Well, there's a couple of things that we did is we first kind of ran through the department directors, made it sure that they liked it, they understood. It's another internal layer. I kind of figured if we get buy-in from those guys, and then probably City Council wouldn't be quite as bad. So they liked it. And then we actually did an official presentation to the City Council, and they really liked it. I mean, we have new council members, and it's easy for them to understand, and they don't have to carry all of the, binders around that they normally do.
Great. And you mentioned some challenges that you had as far as getting the formatting and whatnot for the look and feel of the application.
Yeah, it was a little bit, I think more so it was not so much a technical challenge. I think it was more of trying to identify and get clear in your head exactly of how you want to lay it out. Because the initial format is very important, because basically this is what's going to make or break the project. If it's still the same formatting or following the same principles as you currently have in a 200-page budget book, you're not gaining anything. So you have to have some additional plus. So we spent a lot of time on it, a few weeks, trying to figure out exactly of what we wanted. And then once we have that identified, then we took the data, put it in the appropriate format, and loaded it up. And, it's been going pretty good ever since.
And can you give an example of some of the changes as far as how you presented your data between the previous system and the open budget?
Yeah, because currently, for example, we have a general fund. In a general fund, you have a lot of different programs or divisions or departments. You have police, for example. You have financial services. You have us, IT. You have HR. You have fire, and so on and so forth. So if you want to look at a particular fund, you take it as a whole. You take it as a whole entire unit. And then from there, you kind of lay it down as like how much money is spent on, police. But the police also receives funding from a few other funds. So somebody literally would have to go through, know exactly what funds there are. They're usually about 2 or 3. If they get some grants or some, other revenues that are coming in from different sources. And then you would have to combine those, and then you have to know what programs would fall into each category. So what we did was, because each program was a separate accounting unit, so I had it to the smallest level. So we took that and then basically reclassified this, and here's public safety, here's infrastructure, here's neighborhoods, here's general government. So rather than somebody had to go through and manually do all of the adding, we did it for them. So if council wants to know how much money are we spending on infrastructure, not a problem, here it is. And if you want to drill down and say, okay, how much are we spending on program X, they can get it all the way down to the smallest program level. And they really like that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, one of the things that we mentioned on this slide in particular is talking about how during the actual budget process and showing the trend. Do you think that was a pretty compelling point for the City Council?
Well, I think so, but also that was really good for the public, more so for the council. Because during those council sessions, it kind of gets a little intense, and they kind of get bogged down into the nitty-gritty. But one of the things we wanted to make sure, as the council is working on, trying to figure out what our next funding is for 2016, the audience is able to follow. The audience are going to be able to know, and they're going to be able to tell us of what they think is priority, what they want to see. And it's a lot easier to understand if they know exactly. It's like, hey, we're spending X on streetlights, or we're spending Y on, potholes, or whatever it may be. So it was just a combination of, it was available to the council if they really wanted to do it, and some of them did. But at the same time, it was also an informational piece for citizens, since they follow the council process or the budget process very tightly.
Great. So moving on to the next question here, which I think ties into what we've been discussing. So how did you present open budget to the citizens and to media?
Well, that was kind of a little challenging, because it's one of those, every time you put a news release out, usually it's bad news. So we kind of figured out, like, how are we going to do this? So our internal communications team, they created a video. And the video was really, really cool. They done an excellent job on this, because what they really showed was how you're able to drill down to the smallest level. And one of the examples they did is like, okay, if you want to know of how much fuel is spent for a field operations unit, what's basically our police officers on the street, this is how you get to it. And it showed all the way going through all of those different layers. And the other thing was, and this is really what the council liked very much, is on the capital project, they're able to see on one screen exactly of how much money is spent for capital improvement for the district. So everybody knows, it's like we have 7 projects and we're spending, $7 million on District 2 because we have 9 council members. So that video helped out a lot. And then the other thing that we thought was a good idea, we invited media. Rather than just having a press conference or a news release, we actually asked them to come by and we do a show and tell. We wanted physically hands-on. So we had newspaper, we had radio station, we had TV, we have a couple of council people here, and we walked them through and showed them how easy it was to maneuver around and how to find things, and everybody loved it. And the news releases and the TV and the radio the next day or the same day reflected they really thought it was a cool product.
That's great. So you invited them actually to come to your office and look
Yep.
at it.
Yeah, they were in my office. Normally, I don't want to have nothing to do with the media, but in this particular case, it was actually a good thing. So yeah, we invited them in. I had them in my office, and we done a show and tell. And if somebody had a question, we showed them how to get to it. And at the same time, we also asked Department of Commerce and one of the economic development agencies to come by, and we did the same thing with them. And we done it for 2 reasons. They have the same challenges as we have, trying to present the information in a format that our constituents can understand. So we showed them what we were doing and, wanted to give them some ideas, but also kind of put us in a position to work on joint projects. This is just one of the phases that we're going to be working on. And once we release our open data portal, I really want to see a lot of combined information from a commerce, because we want to focus on economic development. So that's kind of gave us kind of the foot in the door, because they really liked of what they saw, and there's like, how can we do this in the future? How can we combine? So we kind of did a twofold purpose behind it, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Great. And now the training video you spoke of, how did you distribute that? Is it on your website? Is it on YouTube?
All of the above. It's on our website, and of course we have, if you log into our website, we have right on the front, talking about this project. We put it out on Facebook. Our Nextdoor is an application we use. We got it on YouTube. We put Twitter notifications out. We have it linked to our, budget portal and our data portal. So wherever we could, we added a link to it.
And are you tracking analytics or tracking the visitors to your site? And did you see that the hands-on media time, did that improve sort of the number of people checking it out?
Yeah, we had, and I haven't checked here recently, within a 2-week period when we released it and we had the media notifications, we had 500 people come in about, I think it was a little less than 2 weeks. So I haven't checked recently, so I thought it was pretty good.
Great. So the next slide here, how does the City of Topeka integrate open budget into its day-to-day operations?
Well, one of the things that we really did not consider, but it actually ended up working out really well, is our internal departments, because it's a lot easier for some of our divisions and departments to see of where the money is going and know exactly, because it spells it out by programs. It's the same thing. If you talk to our accountants or account managers, they deal in account numbers. They know exactly where the money is. If you look at the division heads and if you look at the department directors, they don't know account numbers, but they still need to know, is like, what is my program amount? How does it fit? What's the X percent? Because that's what they get asked about. And this is a really easy way to get to this information fairly quickly without, digging through a lot of layers of files and, trying to know where this information is. So internally, it's working really well. And then the other thing is, too, we're hoping that we're going to continuously keep this in front of our city council, because the next layer I'm going to be incorporating is the actuals. showing the revenues and the actuals, and that's something that I have not done yet. But once that piece is in there, then I would imagine they're going to be using that a lot to kind of keep up to date, comparing actual versus budget. So that's going to be the next phase.
Great. I just want to remind our attendees we've had some great questions so far, but please feel free to keep sending them on in for Sherry. One of the questions we had was really the FOIA requests. Have you seen any decrease in FOIA requests since you launched this?
Not yet, but that is actually one of our initiatives. We have another portal going to be released here in August, and that's our open data portal. And the other reason behind doing all of this, because we want to eliminate a lot of these requests that we're getting in, because we're same thing. We are spending a mass amount of staff time and hours and cost to, excuse me, to answer these questions, and that's something that we want to eliminate. But before we actually can get to this phase, I'm working on a data policy right now with our legal team and our HR departments and all of the different divisions to making sure that everybody understands the boundaries and what we can and cannot do. Once that is established, then we're starting to publish all of the other information. And basically, I mean, we're going to provide this data anyway, so why go through, and they're not charging, we're not charging very much, so might as well just push it out. So right now, no statistics. Hopefully within a year, we're going to see a tremendous drop because you don't have to ask us anymore because it's going to be out on public website.
Great. One of the questions we just had come in, could you talk about the actual implementation process? How long did it take you? How many people for open budget?
It took me about 5 months, and I don't have a dedicated staff. There is 8 of us that basically do all business initiatives and software implementation and upgrades for the whole entire city. So you can just imagine we're, busy little people around here. So we had to kind of find spots in between. I have 2 other staff people that kind of help off and on. Most of the time, I kind of worked on it in between. So it took about 5 months by the time we got the initial, green light, and then put the data together and ran through all of the different layers, because you kind of have to find, with all of the other projects, you kind of have to find little spots. I wish I would have a dedicated person for this, but, unfortunately, our budget doesn't allow it. So.
Sure. And would you say it was a sort of straightforward project, or did you find there were lots of twists and turns once you got started?
Not really. It was pretty straightforward. One of the things that helped a lot is the project manager that Socrata has and the assistance that we're getting was absolutely awesome. I mean, those, people they know their stuff, and if you kind of ran into, why is it not working the way I thought, or it doesn't look just right, what did I do? I mean, they constantly help you through making sure the data goes up properly and is displayed properly, because having it in a spreadsheet format is one thing, but when you actually visually see it, there's some tweaks you're going to end up doing. It's like, oh, I really don't like it this way. And it's not so much on the operating budget. Operating budget is pretty straightforward. It's the capital. It's like coming up with longitude and latitudes, or how do I put the different phases in? And you kind of have to think forward on how you're going to structure this, because you're not just representing one year. The goal is that you're going to be representing it from here on out, and then basically 1 year to the next, everything is bridged together, so you kind of have this trending. So there were a tremendous amount of help and really, really easy to work with.
Fantastic. We've had a whole bunch of questions come in. I'm just going to hold off until we finish these last couple of slides, and then I'll ask them to you. So off the slide, what feedback have you received so far, internally or externally?
So far, I honestly have to say I have not received one negative feedback. What's really a plus, and it's kind of unusual. But from the council, from internal blogs or everything else, it was just everybody really liked it. They liked the easy format. It's visual, that can understand it, And as you can see, it's one of the best, interactive budget sites they've ever experienced, and that says a lot. Because around here in the Midwest, people are pretty hard to please.
That actually ties in nicely with one of the questions we just got. When you put this information out there, you're sort of asking for the public to disagree with the spending. Have you had any occasions where they've taken a look at the open budget and they're not sure they like what they see?
Well, and actually we thought about that too. It's like, well, we're going to put it right in front of you. And as a matter of fact, we had a little bit of something. It's for some reason kind of appeared the focus is a little bit more on you're not spending enough money on infrastructure, or I need more money on street lights. That's what's going to happen, and you just kind of have to deal with it. And it's a lot easier. They're going to ask these questions anyway. You're just hoping with all of the information that's provided that it eliminates some of the questions that you normally get. Usually it's one of those, you're not spending enough on public safety. Take a look and see how much we're really spending. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we didn't realize that. No, you don't, because if you look at the budget book, you only look at one line item. But you have to total all of those different things together to truly understand of what you're spending. And see, and that's where the disconnect a lot of times was, because they look at one page and not the other, because they look at this funding source, not the other. So yes, it can have some negative impact on it. We haven't seen it so far, but if they do, we'll just work our way through it.
Great. So are you using your open budget portal to do any sort of performance measurements?
Not the budget portal, not just yet. There's two pieces that are missing on this, because right now we only have the expenditures. So the next thing is the revenues, and then the actuals. And once we have those two pieces in there, then yes, we can trend it. It's going to be connected to our financial systems, so the update's going to be done automatically, and it just provides another tool for internal and external, it doesn't make a difference, of how they want to look at the information. So we're going to use it as performance. And then once we add the open data portal, what has all of our other information like operational, how many potholes have we fixed, and what are crime statistics on all of those, we're going to be incorporating that in a performance as well.
Great. We had a question. I think you touched on this earlier, but just to confirm, what type of database are you drawing your data from? It's a SQL server, if I recall.
Yeah, it's a SQL database.
Okay. Another question we had from the audience, have you seen the open data ordinance model from Pittsburgh? Have you seen that?
Pittsburgh? No, I don't think so. I've seen a lot of other ones, but I don't know. I don't think I can recall that.
Okay. And related to that question, have you seen cost savings so far with this project?
Too early to tell. This has only been up for a little bit, since January. So at this point in time, we have not seen it yet. My goal is that we're going to put all of the phases out, and then we're going to start tracking. And the only way we're really going to be able to tell cost savings initially is, how many requests that we're getting, and they're going to be reducing staff time, and so on and so forth. There's still a lot of pieces that we have to do internally. For example, every department has their own spreadsheets of how to keep track of some of the, actual versus budget. So you have to work with them to eliminate. And if you start counting all of those hours that they keep duplicate records, that's going to end up to some substantial cost savings, but we're just not quite there yet.
Okay, so at the end of the day, looking back, do you do anything differently?
Honestly, no. I think overall that process worked really well. I think doing a pilot was the right choice, because you were able to do literally a show and tell and just show everybody of what capabilities are available. But I think overall the process worked fine. And No, I wouldn't change anything.
Great. One final question from the audience before we get to the last slide here. Who's your financial software vendor?
Financial software vendor is Infor.
Great. Well, gosh, we had a great active audience here today. Thank you so much, Sherry, for coming and sharing your story with us.
Not a problem. Thank you for joining and thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and we've got the URL up on the screen right now, so if you'd like to go take a look at the Open Budget Portal for Topeka, Kansas right now, go ahead, take a look at their site, and it's right there. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Sherry, for a very informative presentation, and with that, I'm going to close out this webinar. Thank you.